All right. Hey, y'all. I'm Jennifer with Spark Flash Fiction, and tonight we get to talk to Kendall Hoxsey, who wrote the short story Love Notes from our latest issue. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce her real quick, and then we will hop right into the interview. All right. So Kendall loves life in the magical Napa Valley with her husband, two children, and French bulldog Sophie. As a fifth generation grape grower, she manages the family vineyards by day and tries to find time to write at night, along with reading her enormous TBR pile. Always a lover of history and reading, Kendall got her degree in history and has been dreaming of being a writer ever since she read Jane Eyre. Kendall loves to create stories while she walks the vineyard rows. All right, so Kendall, let's start with your story, Love Notes. What was the inspiration behind this?
Well, whenever I'm just doing chores or this or that, so grocery store, I'll kind of look at the staff and all of a sudden, kind of observe people and think of things. And so one day I was just, getting some dinner items and I was like, I wonder, if this butcher liked that, girl at the cash registers. And then all of a sudden I was thinking of Flash's epistolary issue, and all of a sudden it just started flowing.
Cool. I love getting those inspirations in like real life moments. I love that. So now this is a contemporary story, and I know you love history. So what exactly is your favorite subgenre? Do you love contemporary more, or do you really just love history and historical fiction? Like, what is your favorite?
Oh, probably historical. I think I've just been cutting my teeth a little bit more with contemporary, because at least sometimes I read books and I love how plunky the heroines are, but at the same time, you kind of have to think about historical factors of of what they actually were doing back in the 1800s. But I mean, there's a lot of authors that do it really well, obviously, and you have to attract readers. Um, but yeah, so I'd say always I'll pick up historical fiction first.
Gotcha. Well, tell us some of your favorite historical romance authors.
Oh, well, Mimi Matthews. I
Mm.
love Pepper Basham, A.L. Swords, Tessa. I'm going to mispronounce her name. Ashfar, I think is how you say it. Her biblical story are so wonderful. And then Jamie Jo, right, does dual time amazingly well. So
Yes.
there's a lot.
Okay, so now that I put you on the spot with authors, I'm going to put you on the spots with like a specific title. And you only have to give me one, but like, what is a good romance that you just enjoyed recently?
Oh, let me think. Um, I've just finished Pepper Basham's The Cairo Project, and that was good.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, so definitely when you get time, pick that up.
That one was so good. Yeah. Fantastic. We're excited because she's actually going to be the featured author for an upcoming issue this year. It's
That's
going to
right.
be kind of like an upstairs, downstairs theme, like Downton Abbey or Biltmore or something more contemporary. And I am so excited to see what she comes up with on that. And I told her, I said, you might just have to write two, Pepper. You might need to write a contemporary one and a historical one, and then we will all just be happy.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
No,
But
I can't wait to see that one too. I mean, I plan on, I'm like, oh, I really got to cut my chops on that one. So I'm excited.
yay. Maybe on that one you can do a historical one. Maybe
Yeah.
by then. Yeah.
Well, and actually, my husband gave me a great idea. I was kind of surprised because my husband is not um, a, a reader at all. But all of a sudden, I was telling him about the themes coming up in Spark, and he said, "Oh, well, for this one, how about that?" I was like, "Oh, I like it." So
I can't wait to see it then. I'm excited already.
yeah.
All right. So speaking of romance, of course we have to talk about romance tropes. So what are some of your favorite romance tropes?
I love a good enemies to lovers. That's just, because there's already so much passion, when you're an enemy of somebody. So in that way, it's like you just have to find the right way to kind of turn the arrow a little bit. So, but there's a lot of good enemies to lovers.
Well, do you ever find yourself attracted to one when you're reading, but then maybe there's another one that catches your attention when you're actually writing a story?
I think because at least I consider myself such a beginner at this, that a lot of times I'm trying to think of the backstory. And so I'd love to be able to write that. I think I will, hopefully, in a few years. But right now, I think it's more of the friends to lovers that I've been writing. Yeah, I think, in a way, you don't want to be copying people, but I mean, there's so many good tropes out there, and they're tropes for a reason. So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
they work, and they have people that love them. You just have to find the right spin of what you can do on them.
Exactly. You know what? That is some really good advice. I know you consider yourself a beginner, but that is some really good advice. But speaking of that, so you say you're a beginner, but how long have you been writing?
Well, so I'm 36 now. I think probably I started doing a journal every night since I was 12. So,
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I found my old binder of stories I was doing in sixth and seventh grade. Oh, the romance is so bad. But I remember there was this girl in my class, and she'd asked to read it, and that was just the best thing to build up your confidence level. So even at that point, but I think I would hope every writer that I admire, I hope they go back and they look and just how you grow with each thing you write. And even if it's just a journal, at least it's getting your mind thinking of how you're forming sentences and your voice. One talk that I listened to with agents was, we care so much about just your voice. And they said, I can't give you too much more of a definition than that, but it made me think about just how you do form things, how ideas flow from you that can really give you a leg up on certain things.
Yeah, that is really good advice because I think sometimes we forget about that because we're so focused on just wanting the byline or the publishing credit, whatever it is, that we copy other people just for the sake of having success without taking the time to actually develop our own voice and our own style. But speaking about your writing, you are a mom, and it says here in your bio that you work in a family vineyard. So tell me a little bit about how you find time in your day to find the ability to sit down and actually be able to write.
It's kind of day by day. So I've been, let's see, I've been with my family now, well, obviously all my life, but working for my family for about 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I manage the vineyard business, and that's also including all the clients that we sell the grapes to, and government relations and this and that. So depends on the day. Obviously, harvest is a little bit busy. Usually that's an over 12-hour day, but I love to have time in the afternoon. So it's, with a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old, you just find the time you can. I hate to admit this, but sometimes deadlines are very helpful because it really forces you to sit down.
Yes, it does. So have you finished like a longer project, or have you been focusing on shorter projects because of time constraints?
Well, I think kind of when I really, so I would say I really started focusing on writing as a career part beginning in 2022. So it's really only been 1 year. But before that, I'd say when I graduated college, I've got a couple manuscripts that I'll go back to occasionally and fix up. But then I took Jamie Jo Wright's Mad Lit mentoring class. And so there's a bunch of authors that Danny Renee that, turned me on to Spark. And so hearing their stories and how they all got through here. So to answer your question finally, you find little pockets of time driving. I'll think of stories, and I have a notebook that I'll just write the idea down and do what I can. So I hope with time I'll get a little more in there. Daily word counts are good.
Yeah, small steps.
Yes, exactly.
Now, you mentioned Jamie Jo Wright's Mad Lit mentoring, and so I want to kind of hop on that because I've only heard about that, I think, in like the past year, maybe. I think it's still fairly new, but we might have some writers who are listening who are interested. So what does that kind of look like? What is it that Jamie offers?
So we were her first class. So she always loves Edgar Allan Poe. So we were the Raven class.
I love that.
And so this was January of 22. So it was 4 Mondays, and we went over characterization, setting, and then it was kind of the last class was kind of how do you add in faith, because this is Christian mommy writers specifically, and so she'll give you pointers. She's got a whole slideshow. It's all on Zoom. And then she's got different classes. So it's building your platform. It's just one class and this and that. And she is just a generous person. So, and she's happy to hop on a one-on-one call with you. I can't recommend it enough. And there was, so let's see, Danny and myself were from California. Brooke was from Australia.
Oh, wow.
Patty, she just got a Sunrise Publishing contract, and she's in Wisconsin. But we were all from different walks of life. It was amazing. And we would try to do Zoom calls once a month. It's been a little tough with time changes and things, but so anybody that, if you are even hesitating or just want a little brush up, I highly recommend Madlet Mentoring.
So what turned you on to that? Like when you saw that, what made you feel like that was the next step that you needed to take?
Well, I think because I've been thinking about it for so long, and I had found Laura France. So that's one author I forgot to mention. Her books, I just want to have a room. Nobody bug me. I'm sitting down and enjoying this because we're going on a journey and it's going to be a beautiful one. That's how her books are. And so she had shared something about Jamie. And so then I just went down that rabbit hole and I saw the class and I took a leap of faith, and I'm so happy that I did.
Yeah. I have to say, I love Jamie's books. So I imagine her class just has to be fantastic. But you mentioned Laura France. And so I kind of want to go to her for a quick second because you love history. And, Laura France writes these amazing historical pieces. So I'm curious, what is your favorite historical period that you would love to just sit down and stay in that era for a while?
Well, so my history degree was early modern period up to World War I. So actually my senior thesis was on the Irish women's struggle to bring back Gaelic language and all of their traditions. So I'd love to do that one day. Another author, which I'm trying to get on to read her book, is Amy Harmon. She's another amazing author. And she wrote a book, I'm going to blank on the name of it real quick, but she wrote something to do with Ireland during that time. And I know Jennifer Diebel does great Irish books. Let's see here. What the Wind Knows. It has a little to do with kind of the Irish Civil War and this and that. So Ireland, I'm trying to think anything else. I mean, different periods. I love Jody Headland's, I guess we would call it more Middle Ages, the Enamored. It's fantasy, so it's not exactly, but I think anything history. I mean, my dad loved history, and so I grew up on anything with King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, Prince Valiant, all those things. So I mean, good writer, I'll read it. History is just amazing, and my favorite quote, which is always, such a kind of a trope in its own way, is those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yes, that's very true. So because you studied history, I bet you know the answer to this question. So I want to pop here and ask you real quick. When it comes to researching history and trying to get your facts straight for a story, what resources do you think are a writer's best friend in that vein?
I think there's no better resource than JSTOR. When I was doing my history classes, that would be a great resource because they would have actual footnotes in there and the bibliography and everything. So those are good. I mean, the library will be your best friend. Internet, if you want to just have, kind of a quick little thing, but Wikipedia would not be my first choice. If I wanted to have something that was, very grounded in history, kind of one idea I always loved to do was I had a great Russian history professor, Professor Qualls in college, and I always, what happened to the four last Romanovs, the four daughters. I always kind of wanted to one day write four books and kind of have the happy endings for them.
Oh,
Because it was so tragic.
It really was.
Yeah. So I guess, I would say the early modern period. So kind of just after that period, because there's so much, there's a little bit of leftover of the gentility and the mannerisms of things. But then there was so much innovation and, the difference between capitalism, communism, those things. So, it's a really interesting period of history.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you talked about the Romanovs and you talked about the Russians, which reminded me of Anastasia, which I think is one of that movie. I think was one of the reasons I got people like interested in it again. Which reminded me, I know that's like it's a very long train of thought, so I'm just trying to explain how I jumped here. But which came to my question of what is something that bugs you when you're like reading a book or you're watching a movie that's set in history and you just know that something is off. Do you ever have those moments? Because I know I do, and I'm not even a history major, but I grew up loving Little House on the Prairie, and I wanted to read anything that had to do with like the 19th century. So sometimes when they get stuff wrong, it irks me to death. So do you ever have those moments?
Yes. So on Netflix, they recently had The Empress, and that's to do with Empress Sisi, who was the wife of Emperor Franz Karl. And there was one more emperor, but basically he was the last one right before World War I, and that's when the Austro-Hungarian Empire fell. Anyway, so she's a very interesting character. She had this long, amazing hair. So if you ever see pictures of it, and she's got these beautiful diamond stars in it, and so her hair is all like it's tied around. I mean, so beautiful woman, amazing. They got married, I think, when she was 15 and he was 18. Anyway, so there was a Netflix TV series that's in German. I think it's called The Empress. And just everything, it felt like it was looking at everything in a 2022 vision or lens. And I just couldn't watch it anymore. Because, in truth, like, it wasn't the happiest period. He kind of had his mom, buzzing in his ear a lot. And Cece was a little bit strange. So I know that there was some truth to it. It's not all rainbows and happiness, but at the same time, they were making her have these, what's the word? Just kind of ambitions and passions that I don't think she really actually had. So they're giving it much more of a modern lens, and I just can't stand that. Sorry, my long diatribe.
Well, I've noticed that happens a lot in historical romances too, as you have a heroine, because you talked about there's some that are really plucky, and we as readers, we love those heroines, but sometimes that's not true to the era in which they lived. And so I don't know if you feel like this, but to me, it's hard managing and staying true to what history says happened, but also put it in a way that it's not going to turn off your reader immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I think Mimi Matthews, especially with her, The Beauty of Belgrave and Siren of Sussex, she does a really good job where, she's true to history in a lot of ways. But, you do have to remember that maybe because you're not going to read so many stories, or at least history accounts of certain women, not because they didn't know how to read or write, but just because that's not what they were, writing down at least. So, but you have to think about if they were in certain circumstances, what were they going to do? Well, they do have to be a little bit, have ingenuity and these things. So, there is truth to that where it's not so cut and dry. However, you have to think about what were things that were guiding them, those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. So before we go, I kind of want to backtrack to, you said you have some older stories that you kind of put aside, and then you talked about those ones that you wrote when you were younger, and you said the romances were just horrible. So I wanted to ask you, have you ever considered taking those old stories that you said were absolutely horrible and refitting them and making them something new and better with all the knowledge that you have gained since then.
Yes. One of them, I think I will rework. There's an awful lot of World War II fiction right now. I certainly wouldn't want to compete with Sarah Sundin. But, coming from my lens of California farming family, I think that there's a good story to be told. And I think at least I can't do this with every heroine, but this one really, I feel like I'm kind of channeling myself a little bit. And as much as I always knew my path would lead back to helping my family and run the business, and this and that, but sometimes you don't really want to have your whole future dictated to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's where I kind of, and so she basically a little snippet is like her father wants her to run the ranch farm while he has to then go off and train pilots for World War II. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to join the WACs herself. So I feel like that could be something. So I'm hopeful that I can get there one day.
That sounds super intriguing. I would totally read that.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, when you said that, it was almost like, I know this is probably going to sound weird, but it was almost like a reverse Mulan, where like she wants to go do something, but her dad wants her to stay there and take his place. Instead of where in Mulan, she leaves because she wants to take her dad's place. That is interesting and different. I love that idea.
And that is my favorite Disney movie right there. I love Mulan.
I do too. I have to say, that was a really good movie. I need to go back and watch it again. It's been a while.
It's been great with my daughter because I get to rewatch them all.
That's like my nieces love the show Bluey.
Oh, yes.
And like that's the one show, like they leave their room and I'll just sit there and just watch it because it's for adults just as much as children. It really is.
Yeah, the other ones, let's see, are Masha and the Bear. That's actually pretty cute on Netflix.
That's cute.
And Holly and Ben's Tiny World. That's adorable.
Oh, they haven't discovered that one yet.
It's cute because it's elves and fairies. So actually, if you're babysitting, I recommend it because a lot of the voices are similar to the Peppa Pig people voices. But yeah, and a lot of the comments they'll make only adults will get.
All right. Well, one last question before we go. I know some authors put a lot of thought into this decision. And so I'm curious where your mind is at. Are you leaning towards traditional publishing or are you leaning towards more of the indie side?
At this moment, certainly more traditional. I've heard different stories like Lacey Williams where she was traditional and now she's moving more towards indie. I think with a good platform, you can absolutely do that. And you know kind of what you want. And I feel like again, a novice in all this. I am in talks with an agent for a children's book. So hopefully I'll get that fixed up a bit and hopefully I'll have good news to share then that I'm represented. So, but that's at least something in the works right now.
Okay, cool. That's also really exciting. Love that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and thank you, Kendall. You can find her on her website and I will make sure to put a link to that in the comments. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So you can go and sign up for updates and stay up to date on her writing journey. And maybe you will get to hear that news firsthand from her. That would be really cool. You can also go to our latest issue, Sealed with a Kiss, and read her story Love Notes. I highly recommend it. And voting for your favorite story is still open. The poll will close on Monday evening and the winning author gets a prize. So if y'all love the story, then you should go vote so that Kendall can maybe get the prize.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope y'all have a great weekend. Keep an eye out for more of these interviews and other great things from Spark. Good night, y'all.